Come on, Barbie, let's go party. Barbie, starring Margot Robbie, Ryan Gosling, Will Ferrell, Simu Liu, Michael Cera, Kate McKinnon, and many more, as Barbie and Ken are having the time of their lives in the colorful and seemingly perfect world of Barbie Land. However, when they get the chance to go into the real world, they soon discover the joys and perils of living among humans. Let me first get this out of the way by saying that this movie is definitely not made for me. I am not the target audience for this movie whatsoever, but I went and saw it and I had a blast. So let's get into some of the positives about Barbie. Starting off, Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling are great, as always. They have perfect chemistry with each other. Ryan Gosling as Ken in particular is really just funny in this movie. I enjoyed most of his scenes in the real world. He was just a big fish out of water. So was Margot Robbie, but Ryan Gosling really shined in this movie. And I think come Oscar season, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets at least a Best Supporting Actor nomination. Now, some of the other actors in this movie, Simu Liu, I haven't seen him getting that much praise for this movie, but I was really surprised by how good he was. Kate McKinnon also was hilarious as the weird Barbie, uh, to her face and behind her back. Overall, this movie was just really funny all around. There were some fourth wall breaks that were just great. There were some really timely jokes and just jokes that were really personal to me. And me and my friend were even having a conversation about Lou Reed before the movie. And then there was a Lou Reed joke in the movie, so that was really funny. And I really appreciate how they were really willing to criticize both parts of the patriarchy, because this movie has a lot of political undertones to it, and I think it does a really good job at looking at both parties when you look at the patriarchy, men and women, and it criticizes both of them to a certain extent. And I think when you watch the movie, you'll understand what I'm talking about. And the bravery of Greta Gerwig, who is a phenomenal director and hasn't missed in any of the four movies that she's done. Uh, she the bravery of her to just completely demolish and criticize the IP of Barbie, the daughter to the mother in the real world, had her go on an entire rant basically explaining how terrible Barbie is for feminism and everything about it. And I thought that that was really brave. And I don't think that we're going to see something, we're not going to see a movie like this anytime in the near future, because no other IPs, I think, really going to be willing to make a movie like this. It's really one of its own. I really appreciate that about the movie, and big props to Greta Gerwig for that. Really big props to Greta Gerwig as well for the set design on this movie, because where, like, Barbie Land, it feels like a fever dream, and it's just wonderful. I was like really encapsulated in like the first 30 minutes of the movie. I forgot that Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling were people. I'm like, oh, no, they're people. We're not just watching Barbie Land shenanigans ensue. It was really encapsulating, and that's really because of the set design. The music and the score, the soundtrack, just in general, was really good as well. So those are most of the positives of this movie. Now let's get into something that's more neutral. Now, this is something that I don't personally really give a shit about, but it's something that I think's worth mentioning, so that's why I'm putting it as something that's more neutral about the movie. So they have the world map drawn in crayon behind Margot Robbie in one of the scenes, and the movie Barbie is banned in Vietnam because of that world map. And it's mainly because of the 9 dashed lines right next to this big block that says Asia on it, and waters that China's claiming for its own, and they're saying that it's not international waters. Ted Cruz called the movie Chinese propaganda. Ben Shapiro made some comment about it. And like I said, it got banned in Vietnam. I mean, it's in the movie. They don't really address it. It's weird that it's there, but I don't really care. It's interesting that they have that on a crayon drawing of the world, but at the same time, it adds nothing. It means nothing. It's a really weird controversy that I've seen on Twitter about this movie. But yeah, so let's move on to some of the negatives about Barbie. I think the biggest negative that everybody is kind of coming to the same consensus of is that Will Ferrell and his group of corporate guys is pretty pointless. The movie definitely makes a couple capitalism's bad jokes, and I think that one of the guys that tags along with Will Ferrell's group is definitely a metaphor for people that are just trying to climb up the corporate ladder, and it works, but it's really not necessary. They could have shaved off about 10 to 15 minutes of this movie. It could have been an hour 47, which is a pretty standard runtime for a movie that you take your entire family to see on a Saturday. An hour 47 seems to be the pretty optimal length for a movie. This sits in an hour and 54 minutes, but it's still fine. Will Ferrell doesn't really take anything away from the movie. He just doesn't really add to it. It just makes the movie just that little bit longer and has a little bit more political undertones to it, which segues me into my other main complaint about this movie. I got exhausted with how many political messages that this movie was trying to send by the end of it. I appreciate every single one that they were going for, but towards the end of the movie, I felt, mainly in the third act, I felt that some of it was pretty counterproductive to what the movie was going for. One scene in particular, it just, because it's trying to deconstruct the patriarchy and it's trying to praise women, which it comes at the expense, like it's very possible to praise women without just completely diminishing men. And that's what this movie does for a solid 70 to 80% of it. It does a really good job at just celebrating women. But a solid 20% of it, really towards the end, just looks at guys and says, fuck them. They they try to make up for it with Barbie apologizing, minor spoiler, at the end in a way, but it doesn't really address everything, and it's obviously from Barbie's perspective. Some other things that I didn't really care for about this movie, really in the real world, I didn't like any of the characters. The mom and the daughter were just there. They were a plot device that made Margot Robbie have to get to the real world and figure out everything that was going on so that she could go on her journey. The mom kind of has her own journey. It's just thrown in there so that Margot Robbie can have hers as Barbie. But overall, I still had a blast with this movie. It was really funny. Ryan Gosling was really funny. Margot Robbie was great. All the emotional beats that needed to hit to some varying degree. And if I was rating it, I'd give it a solid 4 out of 5. All right, now let me know what you guys thought of Barbie down below in the comments. And make sure to follow me over on Letterboxd and Twitter. Links for both of those will be down in the description, where I talk movies as well. And we will see you in the next review.